First of all, there's a couple of people I just want to give a shout out to this morning, people that uh, have a lot of significance in my life. And one is Nancy Phillips, who just introduced me. My goodness, Nancy has devoted her career to working with children and families, truly a pioneer. And I have such respect and admiration. Nancy, God bless you. Thanks for your incredible work and for the invitation to be here with everyone today. And the second person is actually Betty Ford. So Mrs. Ford, former First Lady, who went to treatment after President Ford got out of the White House and made it really public and created an avenue for more women, especially, to get beyond the stigma and go get the help they so desperately needed. And it was Mrs. Ford who was truly hands-on. My first 10 years at the Betty Ford Center, she was hands-on. And every time we would meet, she'd say, Jerry, you can't forget, you want to make a difference in the life of children, you got to help who's ever raising those kids. And so it's Betty's, continued focus on that really changed and informed my work that we'll get to this morning. And so we're going to talk about, then we can go to the next slide, Nancy. We're going to talk about rebuilding trust in early recovery. And, in thinking about this, sometimes it's building trust in early recovery because it's never been there before. And I'm going to make this very simple because I have a simple mind. We're going to focus this on the parent and the child this morning. But please don't let my narrow focus prevent you from extrapolating this information, because sometimes it's rebuilding trust with a grandparent who's now raising a grandchild, or kinship family, or other situations. So I want to give just a broad context and a couple of the challenges that people face. And once we do that, I'm just going to give you resources all the way through. Put questions in the chat box. If I can't get to them during the session, we'll figure out a way. I'll get you that information. And then to serve you is the most important thing. So rebuilding trust in early recovery. Artwork is a powerful therapeutic tool. Children often draw what they initially can't say. They create powerful images, powerful visuals. And if they're willing to share it with the group, with other boys and girls, and it's their creation, they get to decide. But if they do, other kids look at it, ask questions and make comments, identify, relate to, and have feelings about. But the key in all of this is to teach children how to separate the person they love, whether this is mom, dad, older sibling, grandma, grandpa, how to separate that person from the disease that consumes them. So this is what kids see. Here, this person filled with beauty and goodness, and all of a sudden gets this awful disease that takes control of their life. And let's remember this morning that substance use disorder is progressive in nature. So as time goes on, you see less and less of the person and more of the manifestation of the disease through the person. And we want to teach kids how to separate this, and then how to tell on the disease. Tell on the disease that consumes and envelops the very people that they love, that wreaks havoc on the entire family, takes everybody hostage. A 12-year-old girl in a children's program at the Betty Ford Center said it best. She said, addiction turns the people we love into strangers. So after 6 hours of being together on the first day of a 4-day program, so we teach kids about addiction, we do group, we play, we eat together, we hang out. And we take out paper and crayons and markers, and we ask boys and girls to draw a picture about how addiction has hurt their families. And I just want to show you 4 of those pictures right now to illustrate some of the things children need in rebuilding trust. So look at this picture. How has addiction hurt your family? Picture that little boy did. So there's the beer running downhill. And there's dad chasing the beer. And I know dad had an SUD that he was working on in treatment, wasn't sure about mom, and there's the 2 kids. And so I asked him, Bobby, what about mom? Is mom chasing the beer too? And he looked at me and said, oh no, Jerry, mom's going to tackle dad before he can get to the beer. But look at this and look at how the kids are by themselves. So in the dance of development, when parental attention is focused elsewhere, sometimes there's no partner for the dance. And part of rebuilding trust is giving kids focused attention, time and energy that's strictly theirs. Next slide, please. So this slide actually was on the NBC Nightly News, maybe about 10 years ago, dealing with the opioid heroin fentanyl epidemic. So look on the left-hand side, as you look at left-hand side in the middle, there is dad who happens to be in recovery from substance use disorder that gets hurt at work and is starting to take pain pills. But look at all the pills on the table, and pretty soon dad's taking more pills than he needs. Go down to the bottom of the left-hand side, and there's mom, who is also in recovery, confronting dad about all these various prescriptions that he has from a number of doctors and telling him, you got to stop this. You need to go get help. At which time, dad hits mom in front of the kids. Mom calls every physician who's given pain medication and said no more. And then dad makes a transition to starting to use heroin. And then he's starting to sell heroin. So on the bottom right-hand side, there's dad with heroin getting arrested by the police. And you go up and then dad's in jail. And then dad gets out of jail and this process goes on again and again. Never again, he promised. And look at the chaos. Look at all of the childhood trauma that's here. Look at all of the adverse childhood experiences in this one picture. And what kids need to rebuild trust is they need structure, they need stability, because those things create safety. Next slide. So how has addiction hurt your family? So lies. Dad, bottom caption by the little kid who's not in the picture, Dad, have you been drinking? And the response is, no, son, of course not. I'm going to bed now. And look at the eyes. Look at how the eyes are all bloodshot. Children know so much more than we ever give them credit for about what's going on in the family. And part of building trust is to create honesty. Now, age appropriate honesty. How much honesty we give kids depending on where they are developmentally. And last artwork slide, please. This is a Friday night, and the little girl who drew the picture, you see her crying. You see Becky crying off to the right-hand side. Mom is in desperate need of drugs right now. She's going through withdrawal process and just needs to use. And so she's going out and leaving Becky at home alone on a Friday evening. But to get out, she's saying to her, you are too much. I am leaving. And so the abandonment, the just not being there, and the blaming of Becky. And so part of rebuilding trust is accountability and responsibility and helping to build our children's strengths and to give them positive affirmations and to show up in their lives one day at a time. So next slide. So let's get into this now. The trauma of early recovery. There's more turmoil and disruption that comes first. As the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says, there's the wreckage of our past that knocks on the door and comes with receipts. There is all of the consequences. In all of my years in treatment, oh my goodness, a number of times someone is in treatment and what's delivered to them while they're in treatment is notice to divorce. All of that goes on. But something else, and Nancy and I laugh at this, because we go way back. We go back over 40 years. And the other thing that I don't hear talked about as much anymore, it's really important, is pause, like a dog's pause, PAWS, post-acute withdrawal syndrome, that for some folks can last weeks, months, even a year or two. Foggy mind, raw emotions, still going through a protracted withdrawal. So those things come first. And Dr. Stephanie Brown, it's a name I want all of you to remember. Down at the bottom, Dr. Stephanie Brown, dear colleague of mine. She's the foremost expert in the United States on families in recovery, done research with families in recovery. And what Stephanie says is you're not putting your life back together. It's a new life. And if you're trying to do this largely on your own, good luck. You're in uncharted course. Boy, you need a map, you need a compass, you need a guide. You know what you really need is recovery GPS. So next slide. What are people told about? What are, the three treatment centers that I've spent, almost 48 years in? What do we tell people? Well, in recovery, parents are told to go to meetings, to meet with their peer recovery specialist, meet with their recovery coach, and to focus on their sobriety from drugs and alcohol. That's your focus. And what I'm here to tell you is that this can be really tough on children, especially those not getting education and support. Next slide. Part of that trauma of early recovery, I'm going to talk about three challenges, but the dilemma is the reality is parents do need to pay close attention to their individual recovery. Next slide. But they also need to spend close attention to their children. And this dilemma of a double focus. Hey, about 10 years ago, I was at a treatment center in Southern California for women and their children. And there were a number of women, just so blessed to be there and to do this. And a number of women were getting ready to leave treatment. And I did this simple exercise. Little did I know how powerful it would become. So we had 4 balloons. One balloon represented your recovery. One other balloon represented your children. A third balloon represented your job, your work responsibilities. And a fourth balloon was just your overall health and well-being. And I have one lady at a time come up and try to just juggle all of those 4 at the same time. Mm-hmm. Boy, it is so difficult to have this double focus. There's only so many hours in a day. So how do I make this plan realistic? How do I keep it simple and doable? Because what we want to do is help people stack success, stack wins, and continue to move forward. Next slide. Second challenge is both the adults and the children are carrying emotional baggage. For the adults, those first things that comes out, guilt and shame. I think back to all the people in treatment for all these years, that they're in treatment a week, 2 weeks, and they come to. And they begin to realize this disease they never asked for has been not only so destructive in their own lives, but all the people they love. And for some courageous men and women, if they can stay in treatment a little bit longer, some begin to remember awful stuff that happened to them when they were kids. And horror upon horror, they're repeating this pattern. What I see with kids are scared. They're confused, they're hurt, they're lonely. They're sad. But usually, in many cases, all of those feelings get wrapped up in anger. So sometimes the first thing that comes out is all this anger. And I'll tell you that the kids and the parents, they don't understand each other in early recovery. And they have a lack of patience with each other. And probably the only personal thing I'll share with you today, because I'll stay in my children and family counselor hat, is that I've been going to 12-step meetings since I was 14 years old. It was Alateen at first, and then it was Al-Anon, and then it was Alcoholics Anonymous. And in all 3 of those programs, I learned a term, all 3 programs, and the word is HALT, H-A-L-T. Mm-hmm. When I'm hungry, when I'm angry, when I'm lonely, mm-hmm. and when I'm tired, my judgment gets out of whack, and I can be in real difficult situations. So it's a challenge with all these feelings that have gone on. And next slide, I want to talk about one more challenge. They don't understand each other, that lack of patience. There you go. Okay, let's go to that next one. So there was a study done called Patient Journey Maps. It's a study done by the Addiction Policy Forum in conjunction with the National Institute on Drug Abuse, NIDA. Patient Journey Map, Substance Use Disorder, Treatment and Recovery Experiences, came out in 2022. Let me take an off-ramp for just a second. You want to all check out the resource Addiction Policy Forum. And how you go there, it's just addictionpolicy.org. They have a number of free things there. They work on stopping stigma, some of the research, like this study. They have so many resources in so many language and in culturally appropriate and for so many cultures. But they also monthly do a webinar like we're doing here, that it's free. And you're talking about some of the giants, the experts in our field. So addictionpolicy.org, please follow them. Okay, now we'll resume our regularly scheduled programming. Let's go to that next slide. Two key findings in patient journey maps that really have meaning and significance here. First one, 85% of the folks in the study, in treatment and recovery, early recovery, report a family history that goes back on average 2 generations. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with adverse childhood experiences, ACEs. And so in the original study by Dr. Anda and Dr. Folletti, your adverse childhood experience score could be 0, there's none, and 10, which is just, beyond all different kind of trauma. Take a look at the average score of folks in this study. It's 4.3. That's significant childhood trauma. Significant. So these parents also grew up mostly. So most of these folks, parents, grew up in a family where there was also addiction. They're yesterday's children that nobody helped. And when we talk about the impact of childhood trauma on trying to repair relationships with your own children, what comes to mind is Nancy had made reference to Dr. Claudia Black. And so what does Dr. Claudia Black tell us people do to survive? Don't talk, don't trust, and don't feel. Mm-hmm. So those are the challenges. Now let's get into looking at some solutions. Next slide, please. So the multi-generational cycle, what I want you to think about, it's not just addiction that gets passed from generation to generation to generation. It's often mental health disorders, generation to generation to generation. And then trauma that goes along with those two things, generation to generation to generation. And so what are we trying to do? We're trying to interrupt that cycle. For the prevention specialists that are in attending. And I've always felt like I'm doing prevention in a treatment setting all these years. But some people see this and say, well, we're breaking the cycle. No, we're not. Are you kidding? This addiction is so deeply embedded in a family's very fabric. It's going to take a while and multiple people to really get to the point of breaking the cycle. How about we just interrupt it? We want to build bridges back. And I want to talk just briefly about the heart connection, because the North Star here in all of this for little kids and for their parents, the North Star here is the love that's there. And maybe the love hasn't been consistently expressed for a great deal of time. Addiction has a way of doing that, but it's there. So we want to try to hold on to. And we want to create hope. We want to create hope. And one of the ways we create hope is by making things simple for children and for the parents in early recovery. Don't complicate this stuff, please. So next slide. So talking with the children, parents talking with the children, and folks in treatment and in early recovery, adults, they need help. They can't do this by themselves. And children need education and support because they simply don't understand everything that's happened. Neither one of them can do it all alone. And I'll just very simply tell you a couple of the things that I would hear all the time. And so for adults in recovery now, or family members, grandma and grandpa working on their own healing while raising grandkids. what'll happen is the adults often get angry and frustrated because they say, you know what, my kids aren't telling me they're proud of me. My kids, my kids aren't giving me props or giving me compliments that I'm working on recovery right now. And my response back is always because they don't understand. How can they give you those when they don't appreciate exactly what's going on? It's a missing piece. On the other hand, children that feel safe, they get angry and frustrated and tell me, that it's tough when their parent starts to get impatient and say, "You need to forgive me now. I'm not drinking alcohol today. I'm not using drugs today. You need to forgive me right now. We need to move on." And I want to tell you that trust gets built one day at a time.
Mhm.
When I'm working with moms and dads and grandparents, trying to rebuild those relationships, I ask them to get a calendar. So go buy a calendar that they put in a drawer. And every day they're walking in recovery. Not perfect, progress, not perfection. Every day they're working it as best as they can, and they make it through that day. Put an X through that day on the calendar. Because every day we can do that perhaps makes up for a day when that wasn't possible, to take place. This takes time. It's little steps. So many people in early recovery want to run a 50-yard dash when the reality of recovery is you're running a marathon. Of course, parents and grandparents want it to be a 50-yard dash because you get it over with and you get through all the pain and all the negative consequences. But it doesn't work that way. We didn't get to where we are in our disease unless it was going on for a long period of time. And it's just going to take time to get well and helping people see they don't need to do it themselves, by themselves. And so how do we do this? Let's go on. Let's talk solutions now.
You ready for another one?
Oh yeah, yeah, excuse me. I was catching my breath. So specific strategies.
Okay.
First thing people need to do is get help for the kids so we can speak the same language. Get help for children. Help them to understand what addiction is. Create a common language. Get everybody on the same page. And my order of preference is I want kids to go to a program, and I'm going to tell you about a program that's virtual and that no child's turned away due to an inability to pay. And I had 4 or 5 people that were with me a year ago who actually have referred people to that program since last year and got back to me and said, that was great. So it works. I'll tell you about that. A program, a counselor, and my goodness, the counselors, you're talking about someone with a double specialty. You're talking about somebody that not only specializes in addiction and family systems and codependency and recovery, but you're also talking about somebody who specializes in working with children. And I've often been asked through the years, my gosh, why do you treat your staff so well? Why do you care about them the way that you do? Because they're golden. They're worth their weight in gold. My goodness. And third would be a book. If you can't do a program, can't find a counselor, I get it. Then a book, but not just give a book to a 12-year-old, not just give a book to a 15-year-old. Have a knowledgeable, caring, nurturing adult that they trust, that they trust. Help guide them through that process. So, what are we looking at? Anthony, thank you so much. Wow, that warms my heart. Thank you so much, sir. And so let's look to the next slide. What do we hope to do, in a program or with a counselor or with a book? We want to teach kids about what addiction is. And we want to teach kids, this often gets left out, we want to teach kids about what the Betty Ford Center Children's Program has affectionately called TNR, treatment and recovery. The superheroes, TNR superheroes, arch nemesis of addiction. I want to teach them about that. I want to teach kids about opening doors to their feelings. Can we begin to get a little bit of emotional regulation for them, a little bit of relief for them? Teach them a little bit about how to do self-care. So really begin to take the focus off the person with a substance use disorder or the other parent who they're scared to death something's going to happen to him or her, and do a little bit of self-care. Next slide, please. And I want to teach kids about the 7 C's. I created this activity like in the mid 1980s. I kid you not. That's when the Village People were still on the charts. Unbelievable. And little would I know that Sesame Street would come along and want to use it years later. But look at those first three C's, which props to Alateen. I learned those first three C's in Alateen. I didn't cause it. I can't control it. I can't cure it. Not my job. I'm just a kid. I'm just a teen. But we just can't tell kids what not to do. We need to tell them what to do. So what can you do? You can help care for yourself, communicating feelings, making healthy choices, and celebrating yourself. Let's give children a chance to be children while they're children. So the first step is let's get them into a program, or let's get them with a counselor or with a good book, so we get everybody on the same stage. There was one time a little girl who had no idea that her dad was in recovery. This is one of the icons in our field, brings his daughter, and in the children's program he tells her, and he's so afraid of how she might respond. And he tells her, in a group sitting knee to knee. And her response was, I'm so proud of you. And thank you for being in recovery my whole life. She looked at him and said, Hey, Dad, I won't get mad at him when you need to go to meetings. Because now I understand. Those meetings keeps addiction away from our family. Teach kids so they can be proud. Next slide. So how do we build relationship, and how do we do it in a way that's simple and doable? And so the first thing, individual time. And we ask people in early recovery, 60 minutes a week as a beginning. 60 minutes a week. And maybe you need to work up to 60 minutes. I'll close with a story about that. But 60 minutes a week. And the idea is not about spending money. I mean, God, we can spend money we don't even have. It's not about spending money. It's about spending time. Time. And the idea is let the children make a menu. Some parents, some people in early recovery will go and spend significant money and really create something that in retrospect is something they wish they could have had when they were kids. And then they spring this on their kid without letting their kid have some say. And the kid says, I don't want to do that. And the parents are, well, geez, if anybody would have done this. No, let the kids come up with a menu of things. Maybe it's making cookies. Maybe it's an art project. Maybe it's taking a walk. Maybe it's kicking around the soccer ball. Maybe it's doing a craft project. Let the kids make a menu. And then your job is to show up and make this as much as you possibly can. We all know the world's not a perfect place, but as much as you can to make this sacred time. Try not to let anything, put it in your calendar, do that. And focused attention, please take all the electronics and put them in a drawer. Focused attention is so important in doing this. And I'll tell you that as kids get older, what they want to do will change, as they change developmentally. I think about one of my daughters, and when she was 7 years old, it was My Little Ponies. And this was like late 80s, early 90s when they were hot. And I'd swear on the Bible, they were breeding in my house because every time I turned around, there were more My Little Ponies. There was Beach Time Pony and Big Brother Pony and Sunshine Pony and Rainbow Pony and Detox Pony. Fortunately, shaking a little bit. And there's Rehab Pony and Codependent Pony and ponies all over the place. What did you want to do? If you remember, well, they all come with a little brush, and they've had so many iterations. I know my granddaughter loves them. They're hot again. Little brush, and you brush their hair, and they all become bald pony and all of that. But just getting on the floor and playing. And I remember another daughter in middle school, and she wanted to pitch, so we practiced pitching. We go out in front, and we'd help her spin that ball, and we just talk and just hang out and nothing else would get in the way of that. And a son in high school who loved paintball, which I just could never wrap my arms around that. Ever get hit by a paintball? It hurts. That stuff hurts. Go find a hole somewhere and just duck down in the hole and watch out. But it was the drive there, and doing things that they enjoy and just showing up and being part of it. Next slide, please. And so the comment in the bot, yeah, sometimes it starts out as 30 minutes. That's great. Let's build upon success. We can do that. I tell folks in early recovery, there's 3 times that kids will talk where you don't have to ask them 100 questions and be a helicopter hovering around them. During individual time, they'll start telling you stuff. In the car, ever notice how a lot of kids will talk in the car? And I think part of it is because I'm driving. I'm not focused on them. They've got space. They're going to talk about some stuff. And sometimes they're with their friends talking about stuff. And even though we're there, we're picking up and bedtime too. There's a little boy in foster care, and he's trying to get his foster mom to understand that when he'd lay down his little head on the pillow at night, the last thing he'd think about is his dad, and will he ever get to see his dad again? Because we don't know where dad is. And so bedtime can be a really tough time when kids, sit down and some kind of ritual to do, whether you say prayers or read affirmations. Bedtime is another important time just to take a couple of minutes, maybe talk about a sunshine, something great that happened during the day, and a cloud, something that was challenging. So prime time talk, really, really important. Next slide, please. So family night, once a week, family night, and it's together as a family. And if someone can't be there, well, we do it anyway. It's not, if we don't have everybody, we take what we can get, but we really want everybody together. And typically, and people get really creative with this. I'll share you a couple of examples, but there's a meal involved, there's fun involved, and for some people, service is involved. And what I mean by that, it's volunteering. And my goodness, I'm a big believer in teaching kids to volunteer for worthy causes when they're young and just learn that good feeling that you get by giving back to other people and learning about other people and other cultures and stuff. And so it could be as simple as pizza and a movie. In other families, no, they want to make the meal together. And there's a 9-year-old tossing the salad I would never eat, and a 6-year-old putting things in the Jello mold, but they make the meal and then they play a game, or they do a puzzle, or they go on a scavenger hunt that they've created. I'll never forget a family who lived in Los Angeles, in LA, not far from where I am. And their faith and practicing their faith is an incredible and meaningful part of their lives. So the way that they do family night is a Sunday day, and they go and they worship, they practice their faith. But then as a family, they go and volunteer. And I can recall that some of the places they volunteered were at a soup kitchen in Los Angeles. Sometimes it was an animal shelter where they get to walk the dogs and stuff, other animals, and other times with Special Olympics. So doing things together as a family is really important part of this process. Next slide, please. An affirmation book. So there was 3 children and family counselors in the 90s who wrote a book called Kids Power 2. It's really a 1 day at a time book for kids. Words to Grow By. Kathy Brown ran a dynamite agency in Dallas, Fort Worth called the Rainbow Days. Betty Laporte, please rest her soul. She in New York worked in a children's program called Project Rainbow, and this other guy named Jerry, and they wrote this book, and each day has one sentence, just one sentence. And what has confounded all of us is through the years, more adults have bought this book not for their kids, but for their inner kid. And it's one sentence. I use that book. It's only a sentence. It's simple. I can do it. So think about affirmations, and in some ways, that's how you can end the day. At bedtime, do an affirmation. Look at how we spend our day, and how that affirmation, reflecting back, was really a part of that process. And lastly, next slide for this part is a family calendar. And this is that, remember at the beginning we showed artwork and I said being accountable and being responsible? So we put up a family calendar for the next week. And you see put on the fridge, but I tell you, you can put it on any place in the house where there's high visibility, where there's a lot of traffic. And in the last year, what I change on that slide now is that a lot of parents actually put the calendar on the inside of the front door. So every time you're leaving the house, you see it. And so we take 10 or 15 minutes Sunday afternoon, early Sunday evening. And what we do is make the calendar for the week. And then, like anything else, like our recovery, like our work, like our relationships, it's all about the C word, consistency, following through. And when we can't follow through, we acknowledge it, we deal with the feelings, and we move on from it. Next slide, please. So, Hazelden Betty Ford Children's Program during the pandemic, we took 30 days to stand up a virtual children's program. I'm not there anymore. I know they're still doing it, and I hear good things. So it's a virtual program. It's 2 days, 3 hours each day. Typically during the school year, takes place on the weekends. Caregivers join each day. Parent, caregiver, grandparent, what have you, join for 30 minutes each day. And no child is turned away due to an inability to pay. You will not be turned away. So Hazelden, and people have trouble spelling that. So it's Hazel, like the woman named Hazel, Hazel, and Den, Den, Hazelden, Betty Ford. If you Google Hazelden Betty Ford, click on Children's Program, you can talk to someone there, and they can sign kids up to participate. Also have a program for teens, so something else to look at. So there is a program, and I'll tell you, during the pandemic, boy, when I was still there, we had kids participating from all over the world. It was an amazing process. So here's a program to think about. Next slide, please. So we look at some more resources. Ah, look at that sweet little girl. There's my girl. That's Carly, lime green with blonde pigtails. And she was part of, and has been part of, the Sesame Street and Community's Parental Addiction Initiative, which was launched on October the 8th, 2019 on the NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt. So the backstory is that Carly is 6.5 years old and her mommy is coming home from treatment. And Carly is excited and nervous, and she's also scared. And what I want you to think about this, and I have the website for you. This is a dedicated website that on 3 different levels. It's a website for professionals. So all of my peer recovery specialists that are on, all my prevention specialists, all of the SUD counselors on, a lot of great activities that you could do with kids. Secondly, it's for recovering parents, especially parents that grew up with addiction and really sometimes struggle with child development and what's healthy and normal and what's not. So ways to talk to kids, ways to explain things, to participate. But the third level is also for family members, for grandparents, for kinship families, for aunts and uncles. All 3 levels, all resources. Next slide. Because one of the resources, and this I call Sesame Street Parental Addiction Initiative 1.0, Play Talk Imagine, a digital storybook. It's the best resource I've ever been able to find to help explain kids and prepare kids when a family member comes home from treatment, when mom and dad come home for treatment. Because you know what it does straight on? It deals with the elephant in the living room that all boys and girls are concerned about. What's going to happen if my parent starts drinking again? What's going to happen if my parent starts using drugs again? And so just the visual characters make such a difference. And we put this together, and the incredible feedback that Sesame got was from adults, family members, people in their own recovery saying, "Where was this when I was a kid?" And so last spring, we introduced Parental Addiction Initiative 2.0. So go to the next slide. Two things I want to share with you, the other resources at that incredible website. First one, all about Carly, a story about reconnecting. So guess what? There's Carly working on her journal, Mommy's Home from Treatment. And in that journal, boy, great for recovering parents. So you know what's going on with Carly and her mom? Every Sunday morning, they go to the park to play, to hang out, to eat ice cream, to play monster ball. On Monday nights and Friday nights, Mom and Carly make dinner together. Friday night is pizza night. Carly loves pineapple pizza and Mom loves olive pizza. On Thursdays, Carly goes to her kids only meeting. Mommy goes to meetings a couple of different times during the week. Carly sees a counselor once every couple of weeks. And mom has not only a counselor, but a peer recovery specialist that helps her too. And there's a calendar that they keep on the refrigerator, letting them know what's going to happen. And so, sound familiar? Look how we can incorporate this and make it simple. Next slide, please. So during Sesame Street 1.0, that's when I wrote the article, Rebuilding Trust in Early Recovery, that Nancy saw and liked, and got us going with doing this webinar. And so this time, Sesame Street asked me to write an article when plans don't go as planned, because there's a couple of really important things I want recovering parents to understand and to incorporate, family members too. And so in the journal that you saw, Carly, so there's a Friday night, mom's got to work late. Work late? Hey, wait, it's pizza night. And mom works late, gets stuck in traffic, and gets back really late. And so Carly's been staying with Elmo and Elmo's dad, Louie. And Elmo's dad is a safe person for Carly. So Carly starts looking at the clock and getting scared, and she draws a picture in her journal. And then because Louie, Elmo's dad, is safe, Carly tells Louie, "I'm scared my mom's not going to come home. She's not going to come back." And mom does come back, and they go home, and Carly feels safe enough to take her journal and show mom and tell mom about her big feeling. "I was so scared that you weren't going to come back." And here's a key point. Oh, so important. How does Carly's mom handle this? Well, first of all, she listens to understand, not listens to respond. She doesn't need to be defensive, because what will typically happen in my clinical experience through all the years is what children will share is not only this incident, but all of the leftover residue from things that have happened in the past. So a lot of that'll come out. And Carly's mom just listened and held her. Carly's mom told her that she was sorry, and they made a plan of what they were going to do tomorrow to make up for, what happened. Because sometimes just life and the world get in the way. But being able to listen and to validate and make a new plan, to not sweep it all under the carpet, but to deal with it, really doable, really capable. Next slide. Nancy made reference to an organization that I've been involved with since its founding in 1983, the National Association for Children Impacted by Addiction, NACOA. There's the website right there. Hey, Nancy, I missed something. Could you go back one slide, please? Yeah, thanks. I just want to make one mention. Look at the bottom there. There is the way, there is the address to get to the Parental Addiction Initiative. I just wanted to point out and make sure that you saw that. Okay, you go back to the next one now. So NACOA.org, a voice for the children. So a couple of resources here, and guess what? They're free and they're downloadable. Just like everything from the Sesame Street Parental Addiction Initiative is free and downloadable. And so next slide, please. So if you haven't done this, please just reach out, go to that website. Tools for Kids. I rewrote this a couple of summers ago. I put a new spin on it. And so there's questions and answers about addiction with kids and a fact sheet and do's and don'ts. The 7 C's are there. Important messages, kids artwork, safe people, and resources for kids. If you're working with kids between the ages of 7 and 12, take a look at the books that are listed. In the summer of 2024, I bought a bunch of books, read them all, tossed a bunch of them. Nope, 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 nope. Kept the ones that are really good. And so they are a really good book for 11 and 12, 13-year-olds is a book called Operation Cool. Operation Cool. And know that. So tools for kids. Next slide, please. And the companion, Tools for Parents and Caregivers, which also got a complete redo last year. I wrote part of it. But what's here is look at the bibliography, which I put together and was reading all those books. So there's books for kids, books for adolescents, really good books for teens on this subject. We can't forget about the teens in all of this. Books for individual recovery, books for family recovery, and even books about this disease. Really wonderful things that have been written. So another great resource to have in all of this. Tools for parents and caregivers. And it's interesting, at NACOA, for years we were monitoring who was downloading that. And what NACOA came to find is the number the number one category of folks who were downloading and using this were grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
Grandparents raising grandchildren, and in a different, not this webinar, but in a different webinar that I do, in the last 5 years when I was still working full time, I actually was working with 3 sets of great grandparents who were raising great grandchildren. And so, and the help that they needed. So that's happening too. Let's not forget, those incredible people that make such a difference in the lives of little ones. Next slide. The only book that I will recommend, and this has been a home run book for years, the only book that I'll recommend is Positive Discipline for Parenting in Recovery. One of my heroes, look down at the bottom, one of my heroes is Dr. Jane Nelson. Dr. Jane Nelson, and she had written a number of bestsellers simply called Positive Discipline. Positive discipline in the classroom, positive discipline A through Z. And among the many strengths of this incredible therapist is that she listens. She listens to those that she serves. And many people in recovery would read her stuff and say, yeah, but it's a little bit different when you're in recovery. And one of the issues that they were addressing is, here I can be in recovery and in the house, in terms of establishing, structure, creating structure and routine. There's some simple rules and consequences that we deal with. And often when children don't follow the rules and make mistakes, and everybody does, sometimes it's necessary for a parent or a grandparent to provide a consequence. But what would happen sometimes for people in recovery is, as they go to give that consequence, or 24 hours after they give the consequence, they take it back because of guilt and shame about how they hadn't been there for their kids or their grandkids for a very long time. And instead of taking them and letting them learn about natural and logical consequences, it's no, let me take care of me and just knocks things off kilter. So with that in mind, Jay Nelson wrote this book, and as a children and family therapist, always teach me, guide me, kids. What do you have to teach me today? Teens, how can I do what I do better? Families, give me feedback on all this stuff. And this is the book that it was always the home run book that people still utilize to this day, still has much meaning and relevance, and giving up the guilt and shame and rebuilding the trust and communication and learning some skills you just didn't have earlier on in your life, but you can have today. And so, next slide, please. So I want to do a couple of things before we go, and maybe even we've got a couple minutes left. And again, what to do is if you have a comment or a question that you want to make sure that I see, just put it in the chat box and maybe we can get to one. I want to do just a couple more things. And if I can't answer them now, I mean, you're important to me. You matter to me. You've taken time. I need to make sure that I'm serving you well. I will get back to you with answers to that. But my hope before I close, just a couple of things. One is that I hope you're leaving with a couple of things. Number one, I hope you're leaving with a lot of validation because you're already doing so many of these things. And I'm sure that you're doing them well. My other sincere hope is today that you had an insight or learned a strategy or a tool that somehow you can use moving forward. You can never have enough tools in my toolbox, always learning and always growing. Always be a student of this work that you do. So important. Probably the best way, moving forward to connect with me. If you want to connect with me, go to LinkedIn. And I know some people LinkedIn, some of the stuff there, I get it. But it's a place that you can connect with me. So Jerry Moe on LinkedIn, that could work really well. And again, I'll do a closing story in just a minute. But even before I do that, I just want to thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your kindness this morning and your attention. Boy, do we have a lot of challenges and a lot of difficulties in our country right now, sometimes which really sadden me. And it's when we hold hands and work together that we truly make a difference. And when we hold hands and create space for kids and teens and parents and grandparents who've been impacted by this insidious disease. That's where we make a difference. So thanks for the difference that you make in the lives of all of those people that you're blessed to serve. I celebrate this and I'll close this way. So I get a call. I've had a cell phone that's been my Betty Ford Center cell phone. And I get a call one evening about 7:15 in the evening. And it's from a mom who went through treatment and about 90 days of recovery. And she calls me and she's crying. She's crying and says, I need your help. I need your help. And I catch her breath. And what she tells me, she's in the middle of a 30-minute individual time with her daughter, and they're playing with dolls. Her daughter is 7 years old. And what's happened is the mom is overwhelmed. Something to know about the mom is mom went through some really awful abuse when she was 7 years old. And so as her daughter is being spontaneous and carefree and laughing and having fun, sometimes for this mom, the challenge is that spontaneity feels like it's out of control. She doesn't know what to do. So we worked on her breathing for just a second, worked on her breathing for just a moment, and said, look, there's nobody on this planet who loves you more unconditionally than your daughter. Let her lead you. Let her teach you. Focus on your breathing. Stay present. You can do this. So the next evening, as I'm leaving work, she's coming into her continuing care meeting at the Betty Ford Center. And she sees me and grabs me and gives me a big hug and says, Jerry, you're not going to believe it. I let her lead me. I kept breathing calmly. When we were done, I have never seen more joy on my daughter's face. Oh, Mommy, that was so great. When can we do that again? Oh, Mommy, I love you. What that mom said to me was that that particular evening, she said last evening, was the most I've ever felt like a mom during my daughter's entire life. And she said, I can do this. And I looked at her and said, yeah. And there's a lot of people that stand right beside you who are going to help you do this. And you know what? That was 8 years ago. So that mom, not too long ago, picked up her 8-year medallion. And she and her daughter, who's now a sophomore in high school, are closer than they've ever been. That's the gift of recovery. That's the gift of healing. And we get to help people do that. So thank you so, so much. I sincerely hope our paths cross sometime again in the future. Take good care. And today I celebrate you.
Wow. Thank you, Jerry. We're at 12 o'clock. I will tell everyone that we will be sending out certificates within the next 2 weeks, but I will be doing mailing. I was taking notes as Jerry was going through this. What I want to be sure and link into you tomorrow when I do a follow-up email so that you have those resources. But the one thing I will say is from the time I started in this field, I was able to access stuff of Jerry's and I've used it all along, and it's been an incredible journey. And I just feel really blessed to have worked with you, Jerry, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And if you can, if there's any questions, there's a way that we can get together and then today, tomorrow, even early next week, and just save some of that stuff in the chat box so it can
Yeah,
actually answer people's
yeah,
questions. I'd love to do that.
yeah. I've been looking at a lot of it's just people saying thank you because you may have done this before, but this was incredible this time.
Well, thank you. Good. Yay.
Yay.
You made my
So,
day. Thank you.
and just so you folks know, okay, there goes my Central Illinois, whatever slang talk. Jerry happens to be in sunny, warm California while we're here freezing from Wisconsin down to Southern Illinois. So a little envy there too, but just
I
take
was
care.
not going to bring that up. You know why?
Uh-huh. Well,
You know why? Because 6 months from now, when it's 123 degrees and I'm questioning why I live here.
yeah.
So, yikes.
Yeah, I understand that. So I want to thank you. I want to thank everybody that was here. There's lots of new names in the list, and that excites me because the more people that we can bring in and share what we can do for our families and our children here in Illinois is so important. And I know it's a passion of many of you that are on there. So I'm going to sign off. There will be a survey pop up. I'd appreciate it if you do that. But tomorrow I will be sending out a Google survey along with some other informational surveys that we would really appreciate you participating in. And love you all. Thank you. And I hope to see you and talk with all of you soon.